So, why start with such a banal topic as two-dimensional thinking, and what does that mean anyway? The reason I want to start off here is because I want to set a foundation of critical thinking for every argument I'm going to make here onward. Now, when I say critical thinking, or when I say common sense, it is something that all people possess, all right? It is not relegated to any class distinction. It is a distinction of humankind, that we can all reason well and we can all reason together. Just because that suffers at the moment does not make it untrue. It just makes it difficult in this moment. So what I want to do, and what we're going to do today, is we're going to look at one of the greatest thought experiments of all time, Plato's Allegory of the Cave. And this gives a basic understanding of how we tend to think, how we tend to reason, the fact that the elements of two-dimensional thinking steep us in not understanding the greater truth when we have access to it. And so I want to start with that. First, I want to give a brief description, very brief description, of what two-dimensional thinking is. And basically, it is just the inability to think beyond mere perception or observation. In this current epoch, we tend to be wedged into a lot of two-dimensional thinking, and there are reasons for that. It can be education, it can be the simple acceptance of an unvetted narrative, it can be some form of mental illness, and it can also come from ambition. In terms of education, it can be either that in which we are taught in some institutional sense, or it can come from personal experience. So what I mean by that is that in some ways, personal experience is a great way to gain knowledge and understanding. It can quickly turn into a fallacious way of thinking if we don't have more evidence for situations that are outside the singular experience that we have had. So we need to take other elements into account. That doesn't need to be difficult, but it does need to be had. Unfettered ambition and unvetted simple dialogue can also lead us into fallacy. Ambition can lead one to not want to know the absolute, all right? Because their job may preclude them from doing that. Polite society may keep it difficult for them to ascertain more truth than what they can speak to their friends and their neighbors. So a sense of embarrassment, but also a sense of the ego is involved and at play. In terms of some mental illness, of course, that could make it very difficult to apprehend, understand, and act on knowledge that one is given. However, I do want to get into a caveat in this, and that is Carl Jung and his expansive teaching on the shadow self. And the reason that I bring this up is because this is not necessarily a mental illness. It is steeped within the psyche of all people. To that extent, we tend to operate a lot not examining that part of ourselves, because doing so can be very painful. It can also be very rewarding, but in order to take that, what I would consider the hero's journey, some guts to begin those steps. For instance, in today's understanding, someone gets triggered. Now, when that happens, the mind immediately apprehends that such a psychological disruption is a personal thing, meaning that it's extrinsic, it's coming from an outside source. Now, the aspect of the trigger may be coming from an extrinsic source, but what we deal with is solely intrinsic, meaning that the first place to go if you're triggered, it's to take that into your own psyche and ask yourself the question, why am I being triggered? All right? It can be sometimes if somebody's really bugging the shit out of you. I get it. But in those moments, especially with things like words or verbiage, something like common sense or something like that, Jung would say, look inside yourself. Why are you being triggered? Is it that the word common sense might have some comport to the fact that you don't believe you have any? Could that be it? Could there be a myriad of reasons? These days, a trigger automatically means that some external source is just bothering us, when it could be the unconscious part of the mind that is trying to bring something relevant to the conscious part of the mind. So this is also a problem in terms of two-dimensional thinking, because we want to hide from that, all right? So as long as I've established that, I want to get on to the allegory of the cave. The thought experiment of the allegory of the cave is fairly simple and fairly easy to understand. Plato said you have a group of people that have been chained and tied to a wall their entire lives. Now, this is a thought experiment. Of course, their muscles would atrophy and there would be nothing left of the individual if that were the case. It's a thought experiment, and I believe you all can partake in this and understand the nuance of such. So they're chained to this wall, and in front of them is another wall. All right? There are a group of people which they cannot see, carrying certain objects behind them, and between their wall and the people raised above carrying these objects is a fire that illuminates the wall in front of them, and therefore they can see the shadows of these objects crossing view. Now, because they have been trained in such a way, or because their mind can only assume what they are looking at, they tend to comport their reality just in terms of what they can see, in terms of their visual understanding. So they can hear talking or grumbling or groaning behind them. There's someone carrying a calf's head, and they think that the world is made of monsters, right? And again, this all has to do with their perception of what is not necessarily reality, but what is being projected to them. All of a sudden, one of the slaves, or whatever you may call him, gets free. And he is forced to turn around and once look at the fire, and then look at the people carrying the objects, and then he goes out into the sunlight. Now, the sunlight at the beginning just blinds him from anything he can see. But as his eyes start to adjust to the light, he actually starts to see the reality that he had prior to comported as all reality. Now he sees things as they really are, okay? And this is part of what is archetypally known as the hero's journey, okay? So to take those things from childhood or not childhood, even into our adulthood, and to question, to be skeptical about what we see as opposed to what we know. And this is very important. If we're going to get onto topics like civics and politics and some form of science, which I believe that even though none of us, in terms of musicians, would immediately pick up a scalpel and do surgery, we're not going to do that. But what we can do is understand certain elements of it. Now, of course, we can take this observation and we can superimpose it on our reality today. However, I want to get to what may be the best part of this experiment, thought experiment. So the individual that is out in the sunlight, and having lived out there long enough and seen enough to understand what reality truly is, he can't wait to get back to his friends and tell them, because they're still chained to the wall. They're still looking at the shadows. And he's beside himself and can't wait to get back and say, hey man, check it out. So he runs back and he kneels down and he tells his friends, look, you don't understand. What you're looking at is all a fallacy. It's all illusion. This is what I see. This is the way reality is. Now, the interesting part in this is the reaction of his friends. They immediately are challenged by what he says to the point that they will not believe him. And not only that, they castigate him for his erroneous thoughts. How could that be true? That can't be true. We know what's true. And he leaves them heartbroken with the fact that they do not want to know reality for what it truly is. Now, how does that comport to what's going on today? I would say over the last 4 years, we have a lot of information coming at us. And in a sense, I think, and I believe this to be true, the institutions that we have trusted for a long time, we have started to see the cracks in the elements of reality that they are bringing forth. Okay? People can say, well, you know, this is your reality and this is my reality. Well, no, not really. You remember the cat's looking at the wall and the guy coming back and he says, look, there's a greater reality, man. You know, you just have to take the chains off. No way. This is it. This is it. And that's not fanciful, all right? I'm not being hyperbolic here. I don't think Plato would have said it for nothing. He said it for a reason. And that's because he could observe it in Greek society at the time. And so I just want to leave that with you for today, because I won't opine on that, to think about that. And what does that mean? I mean, you could write in the comments, you know, how you feel about that. And if we are going to fashion ourselves worthy of moving forward, there are some things that we need to clean up in our own thoughts first, and then some things that we need to address in our own societies. One of those things is politics, is government. Right? We are the people. Democracy is made up of two words, two Greek words. Demos, meaning people, and kratos, meaning rule. People rule. Now, you can do that through representative government, as is the Constitution of the United States. Democracy isn't perfect, and the Greek philosophers talked about that. Plato's Republic is a great read, and not just interesting, but informative as to how the psyche of man works, how he tends to see reality, all these things, as I mentioned in the Allegory. One of the things I think this town has long been begging for is a town hall, where we all get together and we can share our thoughts, we can share our ideas. Like I said, your neighbor is not your enemy, all right? Neither is the person on Facebook. There's frustration out there, and we can mitigate that, man. We are good enough individuals because we are Homo sapien, each and every one of us, and for me, that's where it begins and ends. We can do that work, and we should do that work, because I believe, and I only have history to back me up on this, things are better when we do collectivize. Not when we just simply listen to unvetted narrative and power structures that have their own interests at heart, but when we listen to the interests of a working class, as most of us are, and we start to go, yeah, damn, that's what I want. That's what I want. That's what I deserve. And we do deserve some things in this life. And by nature, we are obligated to them. So I will leave it there. I thank you all for joining in. I'll be back in a few days with another one of these. And thank you.